Okay, so now we come to session number 11. Okay, so first, I just want to go through the 12 links of dependent origination and relate them to the Chaitasikas, or to the, more than the Chaitasikas, relate them to the dharmas of the Abhidhamma system. So we started, this time we'll start at the beginning. Ignorance, which mental factor is ignorance? Delusion. So delusion, ignorance, just synonyms. The sankharas, which mental factor are the sankharas? The volitional activities, what mental factor? It's a very difficult question. Look at the list of, I give you a hint, look at the list of mental factors on page 79. Wow, Kim got it right. Volitional formations, volitional activities are volition. Okay, consciousness, which of the dharmas is consciousness? Okay, vijnana, or consciousness, is which of the dharmas? You have to use the Pali word. No, seriously. Right, citta. Okay, name and form, namarupa, so maybe this I explain. So rupa here, we could just say it includes all of the rupas that are mentioned in the list of rupas, material phenomena. Nama would be all the mental factors, but the ones mentioned in the suttas, we have 5 mentioned in the suttas: feeling, perception, volition, contact, and attention. So those are the special, the ones that are most distinctive. What comes after name and form? The 6 sense bases. So we have 5 material sense bases. So we have, of the types of material form, eye is the eye sensitivity, ear, nose, tongue, body sensitivity. And according to the Abhidhamma way of explaining, the manayatana, the mind base, is citta in its entirety. All the cittas are included in the mind base. Well, the rupa is the material phenomena, and the nama includes all of the chaitasikas. So the 5 distinctive chaitasikas are the ones that are mentioned in the suttas. So we have the 6 sense bases, depending on the 6 sense bases. Contact, so contact is a chaitasika in its own right. Feeling is the mental factor. Feeling. Craving is which amongst these dharmas? Right, chaitasika, the mental factor of greed. Clinging is what? Only greed? What are the 4 kinds? What are the 4 kinds of clinging? Have to speak loudly. Okay, clinging to sense pleasures, what is it? Greed. Clinging to views, what is it? The grasping of rites and ceremonies, or that's also wrong view. And clinging to a doctrine of self, wrong view. Okay, bhava is a little tricky. Bhava, existence as karmically active existence. there's two ways to explain this. In the narrow sense, it's again the factor of volition, because volition is what is responsible for creating karma. But the commentaries say that all karma can be included in bhava, all karma leading to any of the three planes of existence. So we might say that all the karmically active states of consciousness, whether unwholesome or wholesome states of consciousness, all of those chittas that create karma, unwholesome and wholesome chittas, come under bhava existence. And then birth and old age and death are not referring, those are sort of just conventional terms, referring to, the mass of basically the collection of the five aggregates. Because what is born are the five aggregates, what undergoes old age and death are the five aggregates. So that's nothing specific, but it just includes the whole package. Okay, now there's a variety of ways to get, we might call this the bird's eye view of the 12 factors, to get, or comprehensive, a panoramic view of the 12 factors. And we have these presented in the manual of Abhidhamma under the heading of categories of analysis. And then it's all indicated in table 8.1 on page 301. So first, let's take the categories of analysis. And what I suggest is to look at page 299. Keep your finger also on 301, so you could just cross-reference from one to the other. So we have what's to be understood are the 3 periods, the 12 factors, the 20 modes, the 3 connections or links, the 4 groups, the 3 rounds, and the 2 roots. It sounds very complicated, but you see it's very methodical. Okay, so the 3 periods. So it said if when one takes the 12 links in a sequence, that ignorance and karmic formations belong to the past, birth and old age and death belong to the future, and the intermediate 8 factors belong to the present. So those are the 3 periods. Now, before people start thinking, what does this mean? Ignorance exists only in the past, and so now I'm in the present, I'm free of ignorance. And does this mean that craving exists only in the present, and in my next life, just automatically by dying and being born, I'll be free of craving and clinging? It's more complicated than that, but we'll see as we go along what's really meant here. In fact, I think I give the needed explanation here on the guide to number 5. So I say that when the 12 factors are divided into 3 periods of time, this should be seen as a mere expository device for exhibiting the causal structure of the round of existence. It should not be taken to imply that the factors assigned to a particular time period operate only in that period and not in the other time periods. In fact, the 12 factors are always present together in any single life. They're mutually interpenetrating, as we'll see below in section 7. Okay, the 12 factors we've already gone through. Okay, this is where the meaning starts to become clear when we get to the 4 groups. Okay, so it says, the text says on page 300 now, so by taking ignorance and karmic formations, craving, clinging, and existence are also taken. In other words, when there's ignorance, ignorance will be associated with craving and clinging. And what is meant by karmic formations and what is meant by existence in the sense of karmically active existence are basically the same thing. They're both referring to the creation of new karma through volitional action. And then wherever there's craving and clinging, ignorance is behind them. Okay, so that's what's said in the next sentence. By taking craving, clinging, and existence, ignorance and karmic formations are also taken. And then by mention of birth and old age and death, the 5 effects or 5 results are also taken. And so it says there are 5 causes pertaining to the past and 5 effects to the present. And here this becomes clear if you look at the table. The last column called the 20 modes and the 4 groups. So in the past, we have 5 causes. The 5 causes are ignorance, the volitional activities, craving, clinging, and karmically active existence. So from those 5 causes in the past, there come to be the 5 effects in the present. The 5 effects are consciousness, which is brought into being through the volitional activities of the past. Then when consciousness arises, name and form, or mentality, materiality, arise together with consciousness, because consciousness doesn't exist in a vacuum, but it's always embodied in a form and associated with a whole bundle of other mental factors, mentality, materiality. Then out of Namarupa develop the 6 sense bases, and through the 6 sense bases, one makes contact with the world, with its diverse objects, and then through that contact arises feeling. So all of this is coming into being through the defilements and karmic activities of the past. Okay, then it says 5 causes pertaining to the present. So we could see in the table the 5 causes, that is craving and clinging, then karmically active existence, then underlying craving and clinging, there is ignorance, and karmically active existence, as I said, is almost synonymous with factor number 2, the volitional formations. And then from these 5 causes of the present, there will come into being 5 effects in the future. That is, our defilements and karma from the present life will bring into being consciousness, name and form, the 6 sense bases, contact and feeling of the future life. And so you see that there's 5 causes of the past, 5 present effects, 5 present causes, 5 future effects. So 5 by 4 make up what are called the 20 modes. And then when one again looks at the diagram, you could see the 3 connections. Well, first there are the 4 groups. You see the 4 groups are the groups, each group of 5. Then the 3 connections, there is a connection between the past causes and the present result. That is, between the volitional formations and consciousness. That horizontal line is the first connection. The second connection is within the present, a connection between feeling as a result of what is a result of the past causes, and then craving by which the causal process of the present starts up again. So that is the second connection. And then the third connection is that between karmically active existence and birth. So that's the connection between the present of causes and future effects. And so actually, if one looks at the 12 factors, this is the way I think about them. That we see that the list of 12 factors are actually showing pretty much the same thing from two different points of view. So here we have ignorance and volitional activities, formations. Bringing in consciousness and mentality, materiality. And so the whole process of life is the interplay, the vortex, the constantly revolving vortex of consciousness and name and form. And this process of life begins with birth and ends in old age and death. So this is like from one perspective looking at the process. From the other perspective, we start not with ignorance but with craving. Then we come to clinging. To clinging, existence, and then to birth. And then to old age and death. Okay, so all that we need, you can see that each of these is complete in itself, but to show how this would connect to this, we have to show how from mentality, materiality, from this interplay of consciousness and mentality, materiality. What an awkward expression. That's why I like name and form. It's so much easier on the tongue. So from the interplay of these two, how craving arises. So then we simply draw out from name and form the 6 sense bases, contact, and feeling. And then feeling naturally leads to craving. Okay, then we have the 3 rounds. So this is a way of classifying the 12 factors according to the nature of each factor. So we have what are called the round of defilements. This is kilesa vata. So this circle of defilements includes ignorance, craving, and clinging. Or in terms of mental factors, this is delusion, greed, and views, wrong views. Then we have the second round, is called the round of karma. And this includes karmically active existence and the karmic formations. That constitutes the round of karma. And then the round of results will be the rebirth existence and the rest. The rest will include consciousness, name and form, the six sense bases, contact and feeling. That is the round of results. So those are the three rounds. And then we have the two roots, ignorance and craving, as I just showed, are the two roots of the round, the two roots of dependent origination. And ignorance is said to be the root from the past extending into the present, and craving the root from the present leading into the future. But again, that's just a method of speaking, because we could also say, in this life as well, ignorance and craving are, let's say in the past there was ignorance and craving as the roots that bring us into the present, and in the present it's ignorance and craving are the roots that lead forward into the future. So when they say ignorance is the root of the past, craving is the root of the present, that's only true when you look at the 12 links sort of laid out as a sequence. But if we look in terms of the dynamics, ignorance and craving are always the two roots of the round. And then just to sum things up, we have a verse which shows the ending or liberation from the round. By the destruction of these roots, the round ceases, with the arising of the taints in those who are constantly oppressed by infatuation with decay and death. Ignorance again occurs. The great sage has thus expounded this entangled, beginningless round of becoming, with its three planes as dependent arising, dependent origination. Then just to emphasize the importance of dependent origination, maybe I don't have it on this computer, but the Buddha says in the Great Discourse on Causation, the Mahanidana Sutta, he says that it is through not understanding and not penetrating this. You see, there's one occasion that Ananda came to the Buddha and said, Bhante, it's said that this dependent origination is very deep, but to me it seems simple and clear as anything can be. Then the Buddha said, do not say so, Ananda. Do not say so, Ananda. It's through not understanding and not penetrating dependent origination that this world of living beings has become caught up and entangled in this samsara and is not able to break free to liberation. Okay, so maybe we could take that as the sort of exposition, the end of the exposition of dependent origination. And now we could throw the floor open to questions. Wow. Janice, Vinaya. Ming and Stephen. Wow. You guys, because it's going to exceed my memory. Who did I say? Janice, Vinia, Ming. Saijali. Oh, you have it.
Yeah,
okay.
Yes, thank you, Bhante. If karma and ignorance lead to consciousness, is that self? I mean, that sounds like self to me.
Okay, if, again, karma and ignorance lead to consciousness?
Yes, is that consciousness a self? Because that's individualized, that's not universal.
It's individualized, but it's not a self in the sense in which the Buddhist texts use the word atta or atma, because the word atta signifies something which has a solid identity and retains that identity without change. It remains the same entity over time, over an extended period of time, either through the whole course of one lifetime or in the common Indian view, the self remains the same over many lifetimes, countless lifetimes. Like the famous Bhagavad Gita, it uses the simile to illustrate the nature of the self. It's like a person has a wardrobe full of different clothes, and so the person will put on one suit of clothes one day, and then remove them, the next day put on another suit of clothes, the next day still another suit of clothes, but the person remains the same. So that is the view of self. So for Buddhism, consciousness has an individual identity in that your consciousness distinct from my consciousness, but consciousness is something which is always changing and always of different types. So there's eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness. And then if one studies the earlier chapters of the Abhidhamma Sangha, particularly chapter 4, one sees that consciousness occurs as a process, so that the chittas, as I said at the first day, I think, are frames of consciousness, like the frames in a video recorder. Like we have 25 frames per second, so we have millions of chittas arising and passing away in a second.
Thank you, Bhante. And one quick, if consciousness makes contact in the womb, but it's for some reason terminated.
Yeah.
What happens to that consciousness then?
Oh, then it will move on in accordance with its karma to a new birth. Okay, I think Vinaya was second.
Bhante, the question is with regards to volitional formations. We said that there's a mental, that is thought.
You're moving your mouth away from the
Thought, speech, and action.
Yeah.
Are all three of them karma? Or is it just the action which is karma?
I'm not quite sure that I get the question. Say it again.
So we have volitional formations can be of three types.
We have
Volitional formations can be of three types.
Yeah.
Thought, speech, and action.
Right.
Are all three karma?
Yeah, all three are karma. All three are karma. So, sort of the decisive factor in creating karma is the volition. But that volition can express itself through the body in the form of bodily action. Okay, I get angry with somebody, I kill them. So what actually underlies the act of killing is the volition or the intention of taking life. But that intention is expressed through the bodily action of killing. So it's the volition that creates the karma, but that volition is expressed in the bodily action. Okay, I want to get some benefit for myself, so I tell a lie. So there's a volition, the intention of telling a lie, and that is expressed through speech. And then I think angry thoughts or lustful thoughts, but I don't do anything to express that bodily or verbally. So just that purely inner mental activity is creating karma.
That also creates karma. So you are saying that also creates karma. Just say, for example, I have a thought, I want to kill him.
You want to?
Kill him.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's just thought.
Yeah.
Then second could be, I go to him and say, I will kill you. I will kill you. I will kill you.
Yeah.
That could be just a speech.
Yeah.
And third could be, I really go and kill somebody. So all these three karmas have different intensity?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because if the karma is expressed usually through bodily action, it's more serious. Though also, I mean, very serious karma can come through speech. Like, I'm the big shot in the racket, so I don't kill anybody myself, but I, tell my assistant, that guy is very annoying. Excuse me? Or I give the express command or a hint, and then my henchman kills him, but I'm also creating the act of killing, the karma of killing, through that verbal action. But if I just think, I'll kill him, but I don't do anything about it, it's creating negative karma, but it's not as heavy as actually bringing about the death of the person.
Thank you.
Jishu, you want to ask a question?
Yes. I have the question. 是这样的，从12支里面哦，要断哪一支的因才不会有生死的流转？ Translation.
Wait, I'm supposed to be testing you guys.
Her question is, among the 12 links, which one, if you cut off which links, will stop you from samsara, the rounds of the birth and the death?
Ultimately, one has to cut off the link of ignorance.
Ignorance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we said Ming and Stephen, and then Ed. Zai Jiali. You see, my great Chinese, I can always say, Zai Jiali, here. This one.
Hi, Bande. Ignorance dominates all our activities, right?
Yeah.
Ignorance. So this afternoon you said what we do good or we do bad, there always has ignorance behind.
Yeah.
And then, do we ever have a chance to give a rise to the sincere, wholesome knowledge, with knowledge, that type of heart, Jita? The
I'm not quite
first
sure.
chapter, we learned the 8 sincere, wholesome heart.
What
Wholesome
chapter?
consciousness, first chapter, sincere, wholesome consciousness with knowledge. So if we always have ignorance,
I see.
then how we can ever change?
Okay, very good point.
Thank
Let
you.
me express that. Okay, so she's saying that I said in the afternoon, I said that ignorance always underlies wholesome and unwholesome karma, mundane, wholesome and unwholesome karma. Then she pointed out, very clever, that in the list, the table of the chittas, that there are the 4 types of sense-sphere wholesome citas accompanied by knowledge, and even the jhana citas are accompanied by knowledge. So isn't that contradicting what I said? Actually, it's not a contradiction, because this is where the conditional relations, the patana method helps. You see, what I'm not saying that ignorance is present in every state of wholesome or unwholesome consciousness. What I'm saying is that ignorance underlies all the mundane, wholesome and unwholesome activities and states of consciousness. But in the wholesome states of consciousness, ignorance is not immediately present. In those states of consciousness, because there's knowledge, ignorance is not there. But ignorance is present underlying those states of consciousness. An example. I'd have to ponder it and yeah, it's the anusaya, the underlying tendency, is not actually within the citta itself in its active manifestation, but it's still present within the stream of consciousness. I'll try to think of an example or a simile.
Yeah, it's very important to have an example so we can examine what
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
consciousness I have.
Okay. But generally, what we have to do is to cultivate the wholesome cittas with knowledge. And those wholesome cittas with knowledge, particularly those accompanied by insight knowledge, will be chipping away at ignorance. So maybe this is the example, or at least an example. It's like the cittas with knowledge, we have the trunk of a tree is the ignorance, and the cittas with knowledge is the axe. And so the axe is chipping away at the trunk of ignorance, and then when the ignorance gets diminished to a certain point, just like the tree will topple down, so when the axe of insight, wisdom is sharp and cuts away at the ignorance, eventually ignorance collapses. Who is the next one?
Bhante, I am confused about karma existence leading to the condition for rebirth existence.
Yeah.
In relation to the rebirth linking consciousness and volitional activities and how they sort of interplay. Is karma existence the same as the rebirth linking consciousness?
No, karma existence includes all of the states of consciousness by which one creates karma. You could say that the first moment of the rebirth existence is the relinking consciousness. Or the relinking consciousness is what initiates, what starts off rebirth existence. Does that make it clear?
Not really. I'm sorry.
Okay, let me try. Okay, here we have existence. Okay. We have karma existence, rebirth existence. Now, rebirth existence is actually this, what starts with birth and goes on to old age and death. And then the first moment of rebirth existence, technically what is called birth, is the arising of the rebirth, of the relinking consciousness. So the relinking consciousness is that moment when the consciousness arises at the start of a new existence. In human existence, it will be the first moment of consciousness that starts the embryonic process. So that relinking consciousness is the beginning of rebirth existence, and that is the result of the karma existence. So rebirth existence is equivalent to birth, the whole life process, ending in old age and death. And what begins that life process is the relinking consciousness, which results from karma existence. Does that make it clear?
Yes. So volitional activities feed into the karma existence throughout the lifespan. Is that right? A way of looking at it?
Say again.
Volitional activities throughout the life of the being sort of feed into the karma existence, will then pass across.
Well, volitional activities are the karma existence.
Okay.
But we could say, even though the scheme of dependent origination, the 12 links, seems to give the impression that the volitional activities come first, then consciousness and name and form after. But in the course of life, there's a constant oscillation between activities that create new karma and then occasions when we're experiencing the result of karma. So it's a constant, it's like the current of a fluorescent light, which is constantly oscillating back and forth between the negative pole and the positive pole, going back very quickly so we don't see that oscillation. So constantly, all the time in the course of our life, there's the effects of karma are maturing or appearing, then we respond to them by new activities that create new karma, then we're getting the effects of old karma coming. So it's going back and forth constantly.
Thank you.
Okay, Chris here with the blue shirt.
Oh, all right.
Oh, I'm sorry, you had, okay, Ed and
All right.
Chris.
I was hoping, we've talked a lot about karma, and what I'm hoping is that you can tell us, me anyway, exactly what it is in its substance. I mean, we can talk about weighty karma, and we can talk about productive karma, and we can talk about obstructive and time and place of ripening, and active karma, and resultant karma.
Okay.
But if I put all those things together, those are functional pieces of it.
Yeah.
What is it exactly? I mean, I've read someplace maybe that it was a kind of consciousness, but I don't know what it is.
Well, I think I hope that I said it, that karma is volition. Let me put it this way. Karma is volition in its ability to create a force in the mind with the potential to produce results or consequences that reflect the ethical nature of the volition.
Is it a habit-forming sort of thing, or a behavioral forming?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, there are habitual karmas, but not necessarily habitual. Mm-hmm. I mean, I say somebody is not in the habit of killing, but just in a fight, gets into an argument, loses his temper, gets really excited and kills another person. Well, so it's not habitual.
Creating potential.
Let's say that the action
creates a potential.
Creates a certain potential, which, when it meets with suitable conditions, that potential will bring forth results that reflect the ethical quality of the original action. But let me just see if I could repeat it. Okay. Karma is volition in its capacity to create. Karma is volition in its capacity to create a potential. Karma is volition. Did anybody take a note on? Okay, what did I? Okay, that's good. You take the microphone.
Oh, okay. You said karma is volition in its ability to create a force in the mind with the potential to produce results that reflect the ethical nature of the volition.
Okay, that's good. It's recorded. You could listen to the recording later. Jishu, but please don't. You ask the question. We have people who haven't asked questions yet.
Yeah. 班长，我这边还有另外一个问题，就是说，就是说，另有一种讲法是说，从受那边切断啊，那就会有爱的升起，那其他子就灭了，有没有这样的讲法？
Well, I have a different opinion
Dear
about
Bante, actually, her question is related to the previous question. She really didn't get what you're saying. Cut off from the ignorance. She think there's another point of view in saying if you start from the contact you have a feeling. From feeling, have a craving. If you can start from the contact, does that mean you can cut off all the following one?
What you can do. This gets to be rather complicated, but. Okay, when contact generates feeling, and then in response to feeling, craving tends to arise. And so what one can do is to restrain craving, and that will sort of weaken one's bondage to the cycle of birth and death. But in order to completely end it, one has to get to the most fundamental root, and the most fundamental root is ignorance. Okay, Chris here.
So just a very simple question related to some of the previous questions, which is I just don't understand how volitional formations give rise to consciousness.
You don't understand how
I just, like what is consciousness and why, how is it linked to volitional formations? I mean,
how does volitional formations give rise to consciousness?
Yeah.
Okay, first remember that volitional formations are not occurring on their own separate from consciousness. But as I said in the afternoon, when one is engaging in volitional activities, along with that volition, there is a consciousness that is associated with it. Okay, now in the course of life, this process of volition and consciousness goes on through the course of life. Then at death, the body perishes. The life faculty of the body is cut off so that the physical body can no longer support the stream or process of consciousness. But as long as there is ignorance, not understanding the nature of things, and craving, particularly that craving and clinging, the stream of consciousness will, in a sense, speaking a little metaphorically, be seeking another base on which to support itself, another physical basis. Okay, and the particular base towards which the consciousness will be directed, not through its own decision, not in the sense that we are deliberately picking our parents or our mode of rebirth, but just because of the karma that we've created, the storage of volitional activities, consciousness will move, the stream of consciousness, driven by the volition, by the stored up volitions, will move towards a set of parents, say if we're coming back to a human rebirth, and to conditions, surrounding conditions that correspond to the volitional activities that one has engaged in, or with the persons and situation with which one has an affinity, a connection, a karmic connection.
Okay, I guess I have one additional question to that, which, how can you have consciousness without the sense bases? When the body perishes,
Yeah.
what is their consciousness of?
Yeah, I don't think that there's ever a case where there's consciousness without the sense bases. And here there's some difference of opinion. I think I discussed this last year, if I remember. Okay, there's two views. One is that immediately after the moment of death, the moment of rebirth occurs. So there's no interval between the death, the moment of death, the perishing of consciousness in one life, and the arising of consciousness in the next life. So that is one view, immediate succession. The other view is that there is some kind of intermediate stage before consciousness takes rebirth. And now, in that view, or at least the way I understand it, it doesn't mean that consciousness is floating around completely disembodied. What I would think happens is that the consciousness occurs in a subtle body with subtle sense faculties, which we don't see, but, you know, as human beings, we don't see it. But the deceased person, so to speak, still has a subtle material body and still a consciousness, and is moving around until the karmic conditions come together for that being to take rebirth. To discuss the details of this would be a subject for another occasion, because other people have questions. And okay, please.
Bhante, I am an identical twin, so for me it's hard for me to understand how it's hard for me to understand how, as an identical twin, the two of us had almost exactly the same past, and whether that I'm thinking maybe in the wrong way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer. I could only say that maybe there's such a strong karmic connection between you and your twin from, you know, a previous life, or maybe even several previous lives, that there's a tendency to come together with the same parents on the same occasion. You know, I don't know all the details and the workings of karma. Ravi, and your name is? Yeah. Jill? E. And again, I have to ask people to keep questions simple, clear, precise.
Bhante, in Buddhism, they say that the mind is three: mano, vijnana,
Chitta, vijnana.
And vijnana.
Yeah.
Now, I understand now, vijnana is this stream that goes on.
Yeah.
And that's the one that also continues from life to life, right?
Yeah.
Because it's, and that's the same as the chakku vijnana, sota vijnana, the same consciousness they are referring to? Like eye consciousness, ear consciousness. The second thing is, Bhante?
Wait. Let's take one thing at a time. Okay, the consciousness, the chitta, is always changing. So sometimes there will be, when there's active chittas, really, to get this, one has to go back to last year's Abhidhamma seminar. This is really what I covered in about 5 classes last year. And now I have to give okay, let's put it very concisely. Okay, the chitta is always changing. There's active processes of chitta in which there'll be I consciousness, followed by karmically creative processes of consciousness. These arise and pass away, and then there'll be the occasions of what is called the bhavanga. This is the underlying stream of consciousness. So when the active consciousness ceases, then the bhavanga will flow on, one bhavanga chitta following another until some other object impinges. Then there'll be the active cittas, five-door adverting consciousness, I consciousness, receiving consciousness in that way.
Okay, man. So how does Mano come into this? Mano, Chitta.
The word mano is used in different senses. It's a pretty big topic. Okay. Maybe sometime during a sutta class you could ask me. Because people are coming here, some people have come like from Colorado, Rochester, Canada.
Thank you.
And you come almost every Saturday, so you...
Thank you.
So my question is there a Buddhist analogy of a soul? Because, I used to understand that when I die, my quote-unquote soul kind of goes to some source of collective consciousness, and then when the time is mature, there will be some individual aspect that awakens and then comes back to reincarnate as a human being. But I guess I don't really understand the concept of consciousness in this case. So I guess like my question is there a soul, and if so, what it is, and also like what is reborn, basically?
Okay, Buddhism doesn't accept the idea of soul if by the word soul one means, again, this is very similar to an earlier question that was asked about the self. The soul is an entity that retains its identity, that possesses the property of permanence. It always remains the same, and it moves from life to life, from body to body. That the Buddhism doesn't accept. What is taking place in this present life right now is not the experience and activities of a soul, but a constantly streaming, a constantly changing succession or stream of consciousness, individual chittas, acts of consciousness arising and passing away. But they arise and pass away so quickly that it seems that we have a continuous identity. I am the same now, the same person that I was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I don't want to go beyond that. Okay, so when death takes, continuing on, this succession of chittas continues to the end of the lifespan. At death, this succession of chittas will no longer be supported by this physical body, but the succession of chittas will move on to another life when again there'll be new acts of consciousness arising and passing away, arising and passing away. But all of the experiences of this life and of our earlier lives get in some way imprinted in that stream or on that stream of consciousness. So it gives the impression, maybe loosely one could speak of it as a soul, but if one takes the idea of soul as an entity that remains ever the same, that is not accepted by Buddhism.
So I guess the whole purpose of the spiritual cultivation is to permanently eliminate myself from existence. And I really don't like that idea. I want to continue to exist.
Excuse me? Yeah. Okay, sort of what underlies that idea that I want to go on existing is what we would call bhava tanha, the craving for continued existence. And the idea is not like to eliminate oneself from existence, because that self is the illusion or delusion that's superimposed on the changing process of experience. So the goal is, maybe you could say, to bring the process of continuous becoming to an end, which is liberation. Mr. Mint, is that your name?
Yes. Thank you, sir. My question is also a little bit similar to that. I just want to hear something from you, the connection in between in the cognitive process, at the time of termination of the present life.
At the time of?
Death, death conscious, and bhavanga is identical to the birth consciousness and bhavanga at the time of the birth. Is that correct?
At the time of the?
Birth.
Birth.
Right.
Okay. Where to start? Okay, death takes place in one life. Now, some karma that one is created in this life that's coming to an end takes on the role of what is called the rebirth generating function.
Yeah.
That karma produces or brings into being the rebirth consciousness or the relinking consciousness. Now that relinking consciousness just lasts for one moment, but it is followed immediately by what is called the bhavanga consciousness. The bhavanga is what I call the ground consciousness or the base consciousness. And the bhavanga consciousness is of the same type as the rebirth consciousness. And so whenever we're not engaged in active consciousness, then we are in the bhavanga, and that bhavanga is a kind of continual repetition of the same type of consciousness as the rebirth linking consciousness.
The second question is there any linkage in between that, the death and the birth consciousness?
Yeah, that I think I explained.
Five khanda,
yeah.
Where vijnana khanda is one of them.
Yeah, that I explained the two views. Sort of the mainstream Theravada view based on the Abhidhamma is death consciousness takes place immediately followed by the rebirth linking consciousness. The other major Abhidhamma school of northern India, I don't know it very well, but I believe it's called the Sarvastivada school, held that there is an intermediate state. But I don't think the intermediate state means that there's a sort of complete cessation of experience, and then at some point in the future, again, the five aggregates arise in a rebirth, but rather that the being exists in a kind of subtle form with five aggregates still, but they're very subtle aggregates until the conditions become right for the being to take rebirth into one of the realms of existence.
Thank you.
Kim?
Thank you. Bhante, I have two questions. The first one is just a clarification. Through volitional activities, we're creating karma. But if the volitional activities are not associated with craving, then we're not creating karma. Is that correct?
This is similar to the question that Ming asked, just from a little different angle. Okay, in the wholesome chittas, the wholesome states of consciousness, craving doesn't exist, or the factor greed doesn't exist within that state of consciousness. But craving or greed still underlies even the wholesome states of consciousness. Does that clear up that point?
So then there's no possibility for not creating karma.
Well, as long as we're engaged in activity, wholesome and unwholesome activities, we're creating karma.
But I thought the arhat doesn't create karma,
Yeah, the
because
arhat-
volitional activities are not, the craving it doesn't underlie
Yeah, for the Arhat, craving and ignorance have been removed. So the Arhat, he has volitions, but his volitions don't create any karma.
So until we reach like the path of stream entry, we will always have craving in our volitional activities.
Well, even not to speak of the stream enterer, but even the non-returner, the one on the third stage of realization, still has some craving.
I see.
It's only with the achievement of arhatship that the ignorance and craving are completely removed.
Thank you, Bhante. And then the second question is, I understand now through dependent origination why the Buddha take out feelings and perception of the of the mental factors and put it in the 5 aggregates. I understand feeling, but why did the Buddha take out perception? There must be some kind of significance to...
What do you mean take out perception?
I mean, in the 5 aggregates we have form, feeling,
perception, I see.
volitional formations and consciousness.
Oh, so why did he include,
exactly.
Why did he include perception?
Exactly.
I think because perception is a very important factor of experience. Yeah.
I'm thinking, is that possible that, let's say, by the time, let's say, we perceive it's a man or woman, or this person's name is, you know, A, B, C, X, Y, Z, we just going too far beyond the realities, beyond the ultimate truth? Is that possible, that the interpretation of perception?
Well, I say that just perception becomes the basis for many sort of distorted ideas.
Okay.
And also, I mean, it's just a very prominent aspect of experience. So we have, let's say, 3 prominent aspects of experience. One is the felt tone of the experience, that's feeling. Then the cognitive aspect of experience, that's perception. And then the volitional aspect of experience, that is the volitions.
Yeah. Thank you, Bhante.
Dina and...
Millie.
Wait, but first Dina. Dina, you go first.
How does the decision about who and where rebirth is taken, how does that decision get made?
Let me give you an analogy.
Please. Thank you.
If I have a ball in my hand and I throw it from this angle against the wall over there, who makes the decision that the ball is going to deflect at that angle?
Nature.
There's your answer.
Really?
Nobody makes a decision.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
There's something in the Buddhist commentaries, they speak about 5 orders of causation. One is called, what's it called? The Utu Niyama, that's the order of purely physical causation. The second is Bija Niyama, literally the seed order, that we could say is the order of biological causation. Another is the Chitta Niyama, that's the order of mental causation. And then there's the Kamma Niyama, that is the natural law of Kamma. And then the 5th is called Dhamma Niyama, that's the laws governing the working of the Dhamma itself. And so karma is just a kind of inbuilt law of the way the universe works. Again, it's like if I throw up the ball and then it goes up a certain height, maybe 5 feet, then it comes down. Who makes the decision that 3 seconds or 4 seconds after the ball goes up, it's going to come down? Is there something? Isaac Newton is dead for 300 years. He doesn't make these decisions. Because that's a kind of metaphorical, I don't want to say it's, but yeah. Okay, please.
Bhante, my name is Milind.
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 Again, Bola.
Milind.
Milind.
Yeah.
I see.
Milinda Prashna.
Yeah, like Melinda Panha, yeah.
I have it's a medical question.
You have to speak more loudly.
It's a medical question about two states. One state is the state of vegetation, what medically also called as coma.
Yeah.
In this state, there is only a nama rupa left and the consciousness is gone.
I would say, first, I think the state of coma, I don't know that this is discussed within the Buddhist texts, but what my guess would be, in the coma, actually, now I have the answer. Because I had a very close friend who went in fact, he was given up as on the verge of death. He went into a coma, but he came out of the coma and became very active again. And he told me, while he was in the coma, he didn't seem to be responsive to anything going on around him. And we had actually planned his funeral, everything. He's going to be gone. But when he came out, he told me that he was aware of when I came to visit him in the hospital, the intensive care unit. He would come out aware of, the nurses and doctors gathered around him. There would be times when his consciousness would sink and he would be having dream experiences. And then there would be occasions when he would when he would be aware of what's going on, kind of waking consciousness, but no way to communicate or to convey, to indicate that he was aware.
So I should change my will then.
Excuse me?
I should change my will. I just wrote the will.
But I think that there's a difference between coma and the vegetative state. I mean,
for me, I mean the same thing.
Excuse me?
I mean to say the same thing, vegetative state.
I think technically the vegetative state, do you know Kane urine? Yeah. One is more pervasive.
Okay. And the second...
Is there a doctor in the house? Yeah. Involved with terminal care? Oh, I see, that's right. But it can't be just any doctor, but it should be somebody, has to be somebody who's involved maybe with terminal care. Yeah. I think in the vegetative state, all the brain, it's not yet brain death, but it's something different from a coma. So I really don't want to discuss because, okay. Yeah. Excuse me? But this is what I know about coma from my friend who is in the coma.
Okay. The second state is the state of in the womb when the rebirth happens. From the time of conception till the time of chitta or consciousness getting into the nucleus. Getting into that baby.
Yeah.
Embryo.
Yeah.
Is that also just a nama rupa state with no consciousness?
These are questions that I'm not really able to answer. I don't know the answer to this.
Thanks.
And she told you. But did she... Okay, I think we have to end now because if I look at the time schedule, 8:15, yeah. And don't forget, tomorrow afternoon there is the what do we call it? Comprehensive question and answer session. And so I will ask my identical twin to come and fill in for me.